The Targaryens and their dragons rule the sky, but it is House Velaryon that rules the seas. The Velaryons came to Westeros before House Targaryen, settling on the island of Driftmark in the Gullet. The castle of Driftmark housed their ancient high seat, the Driftwood Throne, which according to legend had been given to them by the Merling king to conclude a pact. Their close proximity to the Gullet enabled the Velaryons to fill their coffers from trade in the Narrow Sea and Blackwater Bay. They allied with House Targaryen of Dragonstone and House Celtigar of Claw Isle, both houses of Valyrian descent. While the Velaryons and Celtigars dominated the middle reaches of the Narrow Sea with their ships, the Targaryens were dragonriders who ruled the skies with their dragons. The Velaryons were the oldest and closest allies of the Targaryens for centuries. The Velaryons are sworn to Dragonstone. Their arms depict a silver seahorse on sea green. Their words do not appear in the books, but according to semi-canon sources, they are the old, the true, the brave. House Velaryon is of Valyrian descent, and its members often have Valyrian features, such as silver gold or silver hair and purple eyes. The close relations between houses Velaryon and Targaryen resulted in multiple marriages between the families, both before and after the Wars of Conquest. From one such marriage was Lady Valena Velaryon, married Aerion Targaryen, the Lord of Dragonstone, with whom she had 3 children, Visenya, Lord Aegon, and Rhaenys. House Velaryon allied with the Targaryens at the start of Aegon's conquest, and the Valyrian fleet transported Aegon the Conqueror's men across Blackwater Bay for Aegon's landing. Lord Daemon Velaryon was made master of ships by Aegon after the mouth of the Blackwater Rush had been secured. Daemon was among the closest friends of Aegon and his sisters Visenya and Rhaenys. After House Arryn refused to bend the knee to House Targaryen, the king sent Daemon to take the city of Gulltown on the coast of the Vale of Arryn. A hastily assembled Arryn fleet, augmented by a dozen Braavosi warships, managed to repel the royal fleet, and Daemon perished during the battle in the waters off Gulltown. While the Valemen sank 1/3 of the royal fleet, Visenya avenged Daemon by burning the Arryn fleet with her dragon, Vhagar. Daemon's son, Aethan, succeeded him as Lord of the Tides and the Master of Driftmark, as well as the Master of Ships on the Small Council. For the 1st century after the conquest, the position of Master of Ships was seen as almost hereditary within House Velaryon, since so many from the family were named to the office. The Valyrian fleet also came to make up the bulk of the royal fleet. In 10 AC, Sir Corlys Velaryon became the first Lord Commander of the King's Guard. Aethan's daughter, Alyssa, was married to Aegon's elder son, Prince Aenys Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne, in 22 AC, with whom she had 6 children, Rhaena, Aegon, Viserys, Jaehaerys, Alysanne, and Vaela. Alyssa Velaryon became queen at the coronation of her husband, King Aenys Targaryen. When Aenys died in 42 AC, his younger brother claimed the Iron Throne as King Maegor Targaryen over Aenys' sons by Alyssa, who became Maegor's prisoner on Dragonstone. In 44 AC, Alyssa fled in the confusion that followed the death of Dowager Queen Visenya Targaryen, and Alyssa's last surviving son by Aenys, Jaehaerys, put forward his claim for the throne. Lord Daemon Velaryon, Maegor's admiral of the fleet, who had previously supported Maegor, turned against the cruel king, and many of the great houses of Westeros joined with him. Alyssa's son Jaehaerys became king at the age of 14, and Alyssa ruled as his regent, aided by Lord Rhaegar Baratheon. After Jaehaerys reached the age of majority, the regency ended, and Alyssa married Rhaegar, giving birth to 2 more children, Boromund and Jocelyn Baratheon. The Velaryons of the old king's reign were a house even more influential than House Lannister. After Daemon Velaryon died, he was succeeded as Lord of the Tides by his grandson, Corlys, also known as the Sea Snake, who had risen to fame with his great voyages across the seas of the known world. Corlys took to the sea at a young age, first crossing the Narrow Sea to Pentos with an uncle when he was only 6. Corlys would make such voyages every year that followed, working on the ships as a member of the crew. According to the captains he served under, they had never seen such a natural sailor as Corlys. He became a captain himself at the age of 16 when he sailed the Cod Queen from Driftmark to Dragonstone and back. By the age of 23, Corlys was already a celebrated mariner. Corlys sailed to Old Town, Lannisport, Lordsport, Lys, Tyrosh, Pentos, and Myr. He sailed the Summer May to Volantis and the Summer Isles, and he took Icewolf to Bravos, Eastwatch by the Sea, Hardhome, Loreth, and the port of Ibn. He also took Icewolf beyond the Wall, but was unsuccessful in finding a northerly route in the Shivering Sea around Westeros. Corlys Velaryon made 9 great voyages aboard Sea Snake, the ship which gave him his nickname. Corlys designed and built Sea Snake himself. During his first voyage, he sailed beyond the Jade Gates at Karth to Yi Ti and Leng. Corlys returned with treasures like silk, spices, and jade, doubling the wealth of House Velaryon. His second voyage took him to Asshai, where he lost his love and half his crew, according to the stories. At Asshai, Corlys also saw a ship docked in the harbour that he believed to have been the sun chaser of Alyssa Farmin. Corlys's third voyage led to him becoming the first Westerosi to navigate the Thousand Islands in the Shivering Sea, and visit Nefer in Negei and Mosovi. His 4th to 8th voyages were unknown, but during his 9th voyage on Sea Snake, Corlys filled the ship's hold with gold and bought 20 more ships at Karth, loading them with spices, elephants, and silk. Only 14 ships reached Driftmark, and all the elephants died, but Corlys became vastly wealthy from the venture. He took his nickname Sea Snake from his famous ship. Corlys's expeditions on the Sea Snake have been described by Maester Mathis in his book The 9 Voyages. Sir Corlys became head of House Velaryon and Lord of the Tides after the death of his grandsire. Richer than Lords Lannister or Hightower through his expeditions, Lord Corlys used his great wealth to construct a new seat, High Tide, where he stored his eastern treasures. The towns of Hull and Spicetown sprang up and drew trade away from King's Landing. In 90 AC, Corlys married the Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the only child of Prince Aemon Targaryen, who in turn was the eldest son of King Jaehaerys. 2 years later, Corlys sailed his fleet to Tarth to aid Prince Aemon in fighting the Myrish exiles who had invaded the island. Shortly before they left, Corlys's wife announced she was pregnant. However, during the campaign, Prince Aemon died, leading King Jaehaerys to appoint a new heir to the throne. He chose his second son Balon over Aemon's only heir, Rhaenys, thereby also passing over Corlys and Rhaenys' unborn child. Furious over this decision, Corlys gave up his admiralty and his place on the King's Small Council and returned to Driftmark with his wife. In late 92 AC, Rhaenys gave birth to a daughter, Laena. A son, Laenor, followed in 94 AC. When Prince Balon died in 101 AC, King Jaehaerys' succession became unclear again, and reports reached the court that Corlys was gathering ships and men to defend the rights of his son. When the king declared a great council would be held at Harrenhal to settle the succession, Corlys and his wife travelled there, using their wealth and influence to try and persuade the lords present to vote for Laenor, after Rhaenys and Laena had been passed over once again on account of their sex. Corlys's fame, reputation, and wealth did much to support Laenor's claim, but in the end, Balon's son Viserys received the majority of the votes, and was named Prince of Dragonstone. Following the death of Queen Aemma Arryn in 105 AC, Grand Maester Runciter suggested to King Viserys that he take Corlys's 12-year-old daughter, Laena, to wife. King Viserys, however, chose Alicent Hightower. Angered by the third time his wife and children had been scorned by House Targaryen, Corlys and his family did not attend the wedding in 106 AC. Instead, he made an alliance with Prince Daemon Targaryen, King Viserys' younger brother, equally angered by the king's marriage. Corlys had suffered from the Triarchy's rule over the Stepstones, and together with Daemon was determined to conquer the Stepstones for themselves. The fighting began in 106 AC, with Daemon leading their army and Corlys leading their fleet. They won many victories in the first few years, and by 109 AC, all but 2 of the islands and the waters in between were firmly under their control. When Daemon declared himself king of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, Corlys placed the crown upon his brow. In 113 AC, King Viserys and his small council began discussions concerning a betrothal for Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Viserys' heir. They eventually agreed on Corlys' son, Laenor. Laenor and Rhaenyra were married in 114 AC. When Rhaenyra gave birth late that same year, the boy was named Jacaerys. 2 more sons, Lucerys in 115 AC and Joffrey in 117 AC, would follow. By 115 AC, Corlys' daughter Laena had been betrothed for nearly a decade to the son of a former Sea Lord of Braavos. After the Sea Lord had died, the son had proven to be a wastrel and a fool who lost all of his family's wealth and power, after which he turned up on Driftmark. Corlys lacked a graceful way to break the betrothal, but was unwilling to let the marriage occur, and had thus repeatedly postponed the wedding over the years. When Prince Daemon Targaryen arrived on Driftmark and asked for Laena's hand in marriage, Corlys thus agreed. Daemon mocked the late Sea Lord's son until the latter demanded a duel, in which he was slain by Daemon. A fortnight later, Corlys saw Laena and Daemon wed. Through this marriage, Corlys would have 2 more grandchildren, the twin girls Baela and Rhaena Targaryen, born in 116 AC. In the first few days of 120 AC, Corlys' daughter Laena died several days after giving birth to her 3rd child. His son, Laenor, died not long after, stabbed to death by Sir Carl Corrie while attending a fair in Spicetown. When the 73-years-old Corlys Velaryon fell ill in 126 AC, and maesters feared for his life, the issue of succession of Driftmark arose. The old sea snake had outlived both of his children, Laena and Laenor Velaryon. By law, Laenor's eldest son, Jacaerys, stood to inherit after Corlys. However, Jacaerys also stood to inherit the Iron Throne one day after his mother, Rhaenyra Targaryen, the Princess of Dragonstone. Rhaenyra urged Corlys to name her second son, Lucerys, his heir instead. However, Lord Corlys' eldest nephew, Vaemond, insisted he should be Corlys' chosen successor, claiming that Laenor's 3 sons were not fathered by Laenor at all, and accusing their mother, Rhaenyra Targaryen, of committing adultery. In response, Rhaenyra dispatched her new husband, Prince Daemon, to seize Sir Vaemond. She had his head removed and fed his carcass to her dragon, Syrax. In response, Vaemond's 5 cousins, his wife and his 2 sons, Damian and Daeron Velaryon, sailed to King's Landing to put their claims forward directly in front of King Viserys. The king did listen to them, but when the 5 brothers repeated the rumors regarding the paternity of Rhaenyra's sons, Viserys had their tongues removed. Thereafter, the 5 brothers were known as the Silent 5. Corlys eventually recovered from his illness. When King Viserys died in early 129 AC, and the king's eldest son Aegon, the 2nd Targaryen, ascended the throne, passing over Viserys' appointed heir Rhaenyra, Corlys travelled to Dragonstone to lend his support in the struggle to his former daughter-in-law. He sat on Rhaenyra's council, and was the greatest lord to pledge his strength to her cause. More than half of Rhaenyra's army was made up of men sworn to House Velaryon. Corlys' fleets also gave the Black superiority at sea. When Lord Bartimer Celtigar urged Rhaenyra to reduce King's Landing to ash and bone, Corlys strongly opposed the idea, telling him, "We want to rule the city, not burn it to the ground." Corlys' fleet closed off the gullet and sailed back and forth from Dragonstone and Driftmark, blocking all ships from entering or leaving Blackwater Bay, and thereby choking off trade to and from King's Landing. Corlys was on Dragonstone when the Black Council learned of the death of Lucerys Velaryon, and together with his wife was able to prevent Lucerys' younger brother Joffrey from mounting his own dragon to extract vengeance for his brother's death. According to Mushroom, while Rhaenyra was so grief-sick over Lucerys' death, command of the War Council was given to Corlys and his wife Rhaenys. When Rhaenys flew to Rook's Rest to give aid to Lord Staunton, who was besieged by the forces of Aegon, she fell in battle against King Aegon and Sunfire and Prince Aemond Targaryen and Vhagar. When news of Rhaenys' death reached Dragonstone, Corlys blamed Rhaenyra for Rhaenys' death, as she had forbidden her sons from accompanying Rhaenys. Corlys was brought back into the fold when Prince Jacaerys Velaryon named him Hand of the Queen. Together they planned an assault on King's Landing. For his plan, Jacaerys offered lands, riches and knighthood to anyone who could mount one of the riderless dragons. The dragon seeds. When Prince Jacaerys Velaryon called for dragon seeds during the Dance of the Dragons, Merilda of Hull claimed that her children, Adam and Alyn, who had silver hair and purple eyes, had been fathered by Sir Laenor Velaryon. Many doubted her. Laenor's fondness for men was well known. But the boys had his look, and he had spent time at the Hull shipyards where Merilda worked. That was enough for Lord Corlys Velaryon. Grieving the loss of his children and grandchildren, the sea snake brought the boys to Prince Jacaerys himself. And when Adam of Hull mounted Sea Smoke, the dragon of Laenor Velaryon, the doubters fell silent. Afterward, Corlys and Jacaerys stood before Queen Rhaenyra. They asked her to remove the stain of bastardy and legitimize the boys. She agreed. Adam of Hull, Dragonseed and Bastard became Adam Velaryon and Corlys's heir to Driftmark. However, when his younger brother Alyn tried to tame Sheepstealer, the dragon set fire to his cloak. Sea Smoke drove off Sheepstealer, as Adam used his own cloak to beat out the flames. Still, Alyn was legitimized as well as Alyn Velaryon. House Velaryon blockaded the Gullet and controlled access to Blackwater Bay at the start of the Civil War. After the assault on Harrenhal by Daemon and further blows to the Greens, Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, hatched a plan to break the Valyrian fleet's blockade. Otto reached out across the narrow sea to enemies of Prince Daemon, the Triarchy, hoping to persuade them to move against the sea snake, Lord Corlys Velaryon. Otto's plan took time. The schemes eventually bore fruit, as the High Council of the Triarchy accepted his offer of alliance in Tyrosh. 90 warships, commanded by Admiral Sharako Lohar of Lys, swept from the Stepstones under the banners of the Three Daughters. Meanwhile, on Dragonstone, it was decided by Jacaerys that Aegon and Viserys would be fostered with the Prince of Pentos. The princes departed on a Pentoshi cog, the Gay Abandon. The Sea Snake sent 7 of his warships with them as escort. However, they encountered the Triarchy's fleet, which had sailed up to the Gullet. The Gay Abandon was taken captive, and her escorts sunk or captured. Possessed only of a dragon egg, Viserys had no way of escaping from the cog and was made captive by a Tyroshi captain. Aegon escaped on his young dragon, Stormcloud. Sailors attempted to bring them down, and Stormcloud was wounded by arrows and scorpion bolts. Nevertheless, they flew to Dragonstone, where Aegon delivered the news of the threat from the east. Stormcloud died at Dragonstone from his wounds. Battle began on the 5th day of the new year, 130 AC. Sharako Lohar divided the Triarchy's ships into 2 squadrons, entering the Gullet to the north and south of Dragonstone. They attacked at sunrise, surprising House Velaryon's fleet. Flying on Vermax to meet the fleet of the Triarchy, Prince Jacaerys Velaryon swept down upon a line of Lysene galleys. The sailors had experience fighting Prince Daemon Targaryen and his dragon Caraxes during the war for the Stepstones, so their captains directed their spears and arrows against Jacaerys. One ship caught on fire and then another, however. When Jacaerys was joined by Ulf the White on Silverwing, Nettles on Sheepstealer, Adam Velaryon on Sea Smoke, and Hugh Hammer on Vermithor, the line of warships from the Free Cities shattered as one galley after another turned away. Vermax flew too low, however, and crashed down into the sea, possibly wounded from a crossbow bolt to the eye or pulled down by a grapnel. Survivors said he struggled in the rigging of a burning galley and sank with it. Jacaerys Velaryon leapt free, but was then killed by Myrish crossbowmen. North and south of Dragonstone, the battle continued into nighttime. The southern squadron bypassed Dragonstone, believing that it was too strong to assault, and instead attacked Driftmark, setting afire the harbor of Spicetown with fire ships. The town was sacked, with its inhabitants butchered and left as carrion. High tide and the treasures of Lord Corlys Velaryon were burned by Myrish and Tyroshi soldiers, with the Sea Snake's servants cut down as they fled. Thousands died from the battle, and Spicetown was never rebuilt. The Valyrian fleet lost almost a third of its strength. Prince Jacaerys Velaryon and his dragon Vermax were killed. Adam Velaryon was heavily affected, seeking out the Sea Snake, though what they spoke to each other remains unknown. Many people on Dragonstone came to resent Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen for kin they had lost during the battle. Ultimately, the battle was very costly for both sides, and could be considered both a tactical victory for the Greens and a strategic win for the Blacks. Whereas the death of Prince Jacaerys deprived the Blacks of one of their own commanders and Queen Rhaenyra of her eldest heir, the Greens had failed in their main goal, to break the whole of the Valyrian fleet on the east coasts of Westeros. When King's Landing fell to Rhaenyra, her dragonriders made their descent one by one. Once Prince Daemon Targaryen was certain there would be no harm, he signaled to his wife to descend upon Syrax. Adam remained aloft, flying sea smoke around the city walls, the beat of his dragon's wide leathern wings a caution to those below that any defiance would be met with fire. Once it was decided that Queen Rhaenyra would remain in King's Landing, Adam Velaryon remained with Sea Smoke and Prince Joffrey Velaryon. Syrax, Sea Smoke, and Tyraxes were expected to suffice for the defense of the city, and the rest of the dragon riders went to battle. After the treachery of the two betrayers in the first Battle of Tumbleton, many voices in the Black Council questioned Adam's loyalty. Only Lord Corlys, the Hand of the Queen, spoke in defense of the Dragon Seed, remarking that Adam and Alyn were true Velaryons and worthy of Driftmark. The Hand's impassioned protests were in vain, and Queen Rhaenyra, suspecting a turncloak, commanded Sir Luther Largent to arrest Adam in the Dragon Pit. Corlys warned Adam, who made his escape on Sea Smoke's back. Confronted by an angry Sir Luther, Corlys did not deny the accusations of treachery. Corlys was bound and beaten before he was taken down into the Red Keep's dungeons and thrown into a black cell to await trial and execution. When it became known that Corlys had been arrested, the Valyrian forces, who made up half of Rhaenyra's forces at King's Landing, began to abandon Rhaenyra by the hundreds. Those who remained could not be trusted. As the Second Battle of Tumbleton was put into motion, Adam was determined to prove that all bastards need not be turncloaks. The singers say that Adam flew from King's Landing to the God's Eye, where he landed on the sacred Isle of Faces and took counsel with the Green Men. Known fact says that he flew far and fast, descending on castles great and small whose lords were loyal to the Queen, to piece together an army. By the time Adam was ready to descend on Tumbleton, he had almost 4,000 men at his back. Sir Adam attacked Tumbleton at night, taking the Greens completely unawares. As chaos ensued, Adam could see the battle turning into a rout below him. By this time, two of the enemy dragon riders, Hugh Hammer and Prince Daeron the Daring, were dead. Although Adam could not have known that, he could see the dragons Vermithor, Silverwing, and Tessarion. The riderless Tessarion took flight, and Adam turned his dragon Sea Smoke to meet her. Both being young dragons, they moved fast and nimbly as they fought. The fight ended when the riderless, enraged Vermithor rose into the sky and set about indiscriminately killing those on the ground. As Vermithor wreaked carnage, Sea Smoke fell upon him, driving him shrieking into the mud. According to Archmaester Gildane, Adam must have felt duty-bound to protect his men on the ground, though surely he knew in his heart Sea Smoke could not match the older dragon. The riderless Tessarion soon joined the fray, and all three dragons fought to the death on the ground, amidst mud and blood and smoke. After the battle, Lord Unwin Peake bowed to defeat and ordered a retreat, taking the remnants of the great host that Prince Daeron and Lord Ormond Hightower had led from Old Town. Adon Velaryon, the accused turncloak, had saved King's Landing from Rhaenyra's foes at the cost of his own life. Rhaenyra was eventually forced to flee King's Landing, and Corlys was released when King Aegon Targaryen's men took the city back. Queen Alicent Hightower and Lord Larys Strong offered Corlys a full pardon in exchange for his support of King Aegon. Corlys, however, made demands of his own, insisting that all who had fought for Rhaenyra should be pardoned, that his granddaughter Baela should be released immediately, and that Aegon the Younger and Princess Jaehaera should be wed and be proclaimed Aegon's joint heirs. Although Queen Alicent was outraged by the proposals, Lord Larys Strong convinced her to accept the terms, and Corlys swore his loyalty to Aegon. King Aegon, however, was less willing to heed Corlys's counsel, and Sir Tyland Lannister argued for Aegon the Younger's immediate execution. A horrified Corlys accused them of being fools, liars, and oath-breakers, and stormed out. Lord Larys Strong afterwards went to Corlys to bring him back on the council, and together they secretly plotted to end the war. Following the defeat of Lord Boros Baratheon at the Battle of the King's Road, with an army of rivermen near the city, and a second host, led by Lord Cragan Stark, coming down the King's Road, Corlys advised Aegon to join the Night's Watch. The king refused, but was poisoned soon after, thereby ending the war. Following the death of Aegon, Corlys sent envoys to Casterly Rock, Storm's End, and Old Town, who had been Aegon's main supporters, suing for peace. When Lord Cragan Stark arrived in King's Landing, he took power over the court, and, insisting that the poisoners of Aegon were punished, had 22 men arrested, including Corlys. This time became known as the Hour of the Wolf. Corlys was spared a trial. Instead, he was freed thanks to an edict of King Aegon III that Baela and Rhaena Targaryen had persuaded him to issue. Corlys served as one of the regents for Aegon III from 131 AC until his death in 132 AC. Corlys was regarded as the most powerful of the regents. When he died of old age on the 6th day of the third moon of 132 AC, at the age of 79, his body was placed beneath the Iron Throne for a week. Marilda of Hull and her son Alyn Velaryon sailed Corlys's remains to Driftmark on Mermaid's Kiss. Corlys was then buried at sea, east of Dragonstone, on his ancient sea snake. After Corlys's death, his grandson and chosen heir, Alyn Velaryon, and his granddaughter, Baela Targaryen, married. When Baela became pregnant, Alyn wished to name the child after Corlys. The child turned out to be a girl, however, and was instead named Laena, after Corlys' daughter. Alyn was refused his grandfather's place as regent for the young king, and then was made to sail against the Stepstones. Lord Alyn's attack against the Braavosi and the Stepstones earned him great fame and reputation. He gained the name Oakenfist for sinking the Grand Defiance with his queen Rhaenys like a great oaken fist, and was also known as the hero of the Stepstones. Alyn won honors and rewards from the regents. Despite Lord Peake's protests, Alyn received knighthood from Sir Marston Waters, the Lord Commander of the King's Guard, and was named Master of Ships by the King. Alyn was later dispatched to the Westerlands to defeat Alden Greyjoy, the Red Kraken. Lord Unwin had hoped that Alyn would fail, but instead this expedition became the first of Alyn's 6 great voyages. Alyn later played an important role in the return of Aegon's brother, Viserys, having negotiated his release from captivity in Lys. Alyn and Baela's marriage was a stormy one. The Velaryons had lost much of their wealth to the Rogeri Bank, so in 136 AC, Alyn assembled a fleet of merchantmen and war galleys, led by bold Marilda, for a trading expedition to Volantis. When Alyn first made his plans to leave Driftmark, Baela quarreled with him, as she had heard the rumors of her husband's involvement with Alliantra Martell. However, they reconciled as always before Alyn left Driftmark, where Baela remained, pregnant with their second child. While Corlys Velaryon had made all of his 9 great voyages on the Sea Snake, Alyn's 6 great voyages were made on 6 different ships, which he called My Ladies. In 138 AC, Adam Valyrian's bones were returned to Driftmark from Raventree Hall. Alyn used only a single word, loyal, as the epitaph on his brother's new tomb, along with carvings of a mouse and a seahorse. In 157 AC, Alyn took a decisive part in King Daeron's conquest of Dorne as master of ships. He commanded a fleet that broke the Planky town and swept halfway up the Greenblood River, while the main Dornish strength was engaged with Daeron in the Prince's Pass. Alyn returned to subdue the Planky town and the Greenblood in 160 AC after the Dornishmen rebelled, but the young dragon Daeron was slain the following year while under a peace ban. His successor, King Baelor, made peace with the Dornish. On another voyage between 171 and 176 AC, Alyn Velaryon disappeared at sea. After the death of Alyn, House Velaryon, already in decline, became practically invisible, no longer marrying into House Targaryen or other great houses, as the Velaryons lost all their wealth during the dance. After Robert's rebellion, the new king, Robert, granted the castle Dragonstone to his brother Stannis. The Velaryons have been sworn to House Baratheon of Dragonstone ever since. During the Battle of the Blackwater, Lord Montfort Velaryon aids Stannis in sieging King's Landing. However, Montfort burns with his ship at the Battle of the Blackwater. Before sinking, the Pride of Driftmark manages to take down 2 ships of the royal fleet. Montfort is succeeded by his 6-year-old son, Monterys. Despite Stannis' defeat at the Blackwater, the Velaryons are still counted among his supporters and aid Stannis in the battle beneath the wall. However, Aurane Waters, the bastard of Driftmark, wins the favor of Queen Regent Cersei Lannister, who finds that Aurane reminds her of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen due to his Valyrian appearance, regardless of his youth and Sir Jaime Lannister's objections. Cersei names Aurane as the new master of ships. In that position, Aurane proposes the construction of new dromons and also suggests crewing them with thieves and poachers. Thus ended the long, turbulent saga of House Velaryon, a house that once rivaled the Targaryens. From the golden age of Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, whose voyages stretched to the far corners of the world, to the valor and sacrifice of Adam Velaryon during the Dance of the Dragons, the house stood proudly at the center of Westerosi history. But the Velaryons faded. Their power ebbed after the dance, their wealth lost to war and debt, their name gradually falling from the mouths of kings and lords. By the time of Robert's rebellion, the great lords of Driftmark had become shadows of their former selves, divided, diminished, and forgotten by most. In the War of the Five Kings, House Velaryon stood on both sides of the conflict. A 6-year-old Lord Monterys followed Stannis Baratheon into hopeless battle, while Aurane Waters, a bastard of Driftmark, rose in the service of Queen Regent Cersei Lannister, commanding fleets filled with thieves and outlaws. One child clinging to a crumbling legacy, the other seizing what power he could from the ruins. What was once a unified house of sailors, knights, and kingmakers had become a fractured name in a world that no longer remembered their greatness. From sea snake to scattered storm, House Velaryon, once glorious, now merely adrift.